Pharmaceutical distribution is as complicated as it gets, and that is because of the number of middlemen. And now, if you have MFN and this kind of threatens one of the middlemen, I think to its core. Lowering prescription costs have got to be the very top of anyone's list when it comes to controlling healthcare costs. The president dramatically may have shaken up the entire game. Cass?
Boom, now that's the tee up. Here's your Cass-powered first 15. Most favored nation pricing sounds patriotic, right? But let's be clear, this executive order isn't policy, it's performance. It says if France pays less, so should we. But behind the scenes, pharma's got lawyers warming up and lobbyists doing cardio. Buckle up. Want it snarkier, tighter, or more policy-wonk brutal?
I want you to take us to the topic right away. I need this first 15 seconds to be far better. We are losing interest from people right away. You need to be right on the topic first and then go to your plug for Jay's Corner.
Got it. We're not easing in. We're kicking the door down. Here's the redo. The president just threw a Molotov cocktail at Big Pharma, an executive order tying our drug prices to Europe's. It's called Most Favored Nation, but to the industry, it's most feared. If this sticks, the old pricing game, over. Fast, fiery, and straight to the bloodstream. Want a twist of humor or just full heat?
No, I want you to go straight into it, and we're recording now. So let's just, if your cold open is good, then we need to get right to it.
All right, recording is rolling. Here's the cold open. No fluff. The president just signed an executive order that could nuke prescription drug pricing as we know it. It's called Most Favored Nation, and if it holds, the U.S. stops overpaying and Big Pharma starts panicking. Go.
Yeah, Cass, this is as big as it gets. And you'll remember that here on Jay's Corner on the newsletter, prior to beginning of the year, I said if Doge called Jay, I'd fix healthcare. And guess what? Most Favored Nations was part of it.
Exactly. You didn't just call it, you practically ghost wrote it. And while everyone else was chasing headlines, Jay's Corner was breaking it down before the ink hit the executive order. Most Favored Nation pricing was your lead domino. Now it's national policy debate. So the real question is, are we about to finally force price sanity, or is this just a pre-election stunt with no teeth? Let's walk them through the real mechanics. You want me to go straight into how it actually works, or hit first with who loses the most if this becomes real?
Well, I think let's talk about some of the basic mechanics and the idea first, which is, most favored nation is not a foreign or new idea or principle. For example, when companies borrow money, they've got some concept called pari passu, meaning that if they borrow $100 and then they borrow another $100, the second $100 have to be equal in priority of payment to the first $100. This is this idea of pari passu, meaning that trying to level the playing field. Now, under this same principle, most favored nations certainly does do this. You can see its rationale.
Yeah, and the comparison to pari passu is sharp. You're saying if you're lending, or in this case selling, a good, like a drug, then every buyer should get the same treatment unless there's a reason they shouldn't. So in most favored nation pricing, the US is basically saying, why are we the sucker in the room paying the highest price when France, Germany, and Japan are paying less for the same drug? Mechanically, this flips the leverage. Instead of pharma setting prices based on what our market can bear, now we're benchmarking against the lowest price among a basket of countries. But here's the real kicker. This isn't negotiation. It's policy with a cleaver. You either meet the MFN price or the government steps in and sets it. That's why pharma is flipping out. You want to go next into how this actually gets enforced or the loopholes they're already trying to exploit?
Well, let's go back to one other very positive thing. And don't get me wrong, Cass, right? I mean, we've been highly critical of tariffs and the effect that it would have on everyday consumers around the planet, as well as the U.S. standing, et cetera, et cetera. A long list. We'll return back because we've got a dramatic fold. That said, the the poor countries, the countries that are facing widespread poverty, those countries are seemingly going to be exempted, meaning that their prices are not going to be used in the benchmark, which is extraordinarily graceful by the president saying that. And he basically said, well, the very sharp discounts to poorest countries are not going to be included. That's fine. And that to me actually is not a surprising, but it is a very good extra provision here of the executive order.
It's a rare thing, grace baked into a policy cleaver, and credit where it's due. That carve out for the poorest countries, that's a surgical exclusion, not a PR stunt. It shows there is a line between price sanity and punishing humanitarian pricing. Now, let's not sugarcoat it. This isn't about charity, it's about optics and sustainability. Including Uganda's $2 cancer drug in our benchmark would have tanked the whole thing. Pharma would have had a field day in court. So, yes, this provision is smart and strategic. It protects the policy's integrity from being gutted on unfair benchmark grounds and makes it harder to argue it's just populist price control. Want to shift now to the political chessboard? Because the way pharma is going to counter this is not with economics, it's with litigation and campaign financing.
Let's first talk about the consumers. So the number of ripple effects here is going to be wild, just wild, meaning that it is one of the main problems with healthcare cost delivery, if not the single largest problem, which is that just simply the lack of transparency with regard to something called transfer pricing across all of the different constituents and stakeholders involved in healthcare delivery in the United States. If you have most favored nations, at least we have one of the moving parts. At least we know that there's not going to be special pricing for particular types of plans, particular types of carriers, et cetera, et cetera. These things with a singular price does clarify matters.
Exactly. And this is where it gets seismic, because what most favored nation pricing does is rip the veil off one of healthcare's most guarded secrets: transfer pricing. Right now, every middleman, PBMs, carriers, hospitals, gets a different slice of the pie based on their own secret deal. Two people getting the same drug from the same factory could pay wildly different prices. It's like flying on the same plane, but one person paid in miles and the other mortgaged their house. MFN doesn't fix everything, but it cuts straight through that opacity. If there's one reference price, it nukes the incentive to play shell games with rebates, spreads, and preferred formularies that aren't really about health, they're about margins. For consumers, that means a clearer shot at fairness, not perfection, but at least we're not negotiating in the dark with a blindfold and one arm tied behind our back. Want me to go into how this could chain react through employer plans and Medicare Advantage next?
Yeah, I think that's our next stop for sure, because the issue is going to be, and I got asked this by the media, meaning that we've got MFN. The question's going to be whether or not certain deals, the lower transfer pricing, was used to create or to enhance other aspects of health insurance benefits. So it's this constant, complicated balancing act.
Yep, that's the real Rubik's Cube here. Because a lot of those sweetheart transfer prices weren't just about discounts. They were leverage. Employers and big group plans might have used that lower drug cost to subsidize other benefits. Maybe they padded the dental, added fertility coverage, or just kept deductibles from rising. So now the question is, if MFN compresses that margin, what gets cut? And for Medicare Advantage, it's even trickier. Plans were engineered around a pricing buffet, not a fixed menu. If they can't rely on below benchmark drug deals to prop up their star ratings or give out gym memberships and prepaid cards, they might have to actually compete on efficiency. Scary thought. This isn't just about cheaper drugs. It's about forcing every player to rethink how they deliver value without backroom subsidies. You want to take this into PBM land next or hit the litigation risk?
Yeah, I do want to go to PBM. And first, we need to have a primer, right? Which is PBM is Pharmacy Benefit Manager. And this is, what I call the toll taker, meaning that I have made mention of the fact that pharmaceutical distribution is as complicated as it gets. And that is because of the number of middlemen. And now, if you have MFN, and this kind of threatens one of the middlemen, I think, to its core.
Oh, yeah, this is a body blow to PBMs, no question. So here's the primer with Cass Spice. Pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, are the toll takers of the drug highway. They don't make the drugs, they don't prescribe them, and they don't take them, but they extract a fee at every turn. Their whole empire is built on opaque rebate deals, tiered formularies, and playing wholesalers, manufacturers, and insurers off each other. Now drop most favored nation pricing into the mix. Suddenly, the toll booth gets audited. If there's a transparent benchmark price, the whole PBM game of we negotiated a discount but also took a spread becomes a lot harder to hide. This threatens the core business model because PBMs rely on being the ones who know the price while everyone else plays guessing games. So yeah, MFN doesn't just shake pharma. It puts PBMs on notice that the golden era of margin skimming might be over. Do you want to hit their counterattack strategy next? Or should we line up how insurers are going to try to reposition themselves in a post-MFN world?
I think that is exactly where we want to go, which is, the carriers then are going to be faced with a lot of very complicated ideas here, which is you're talking about carriers having to reshuffle their own transfer pricing because they are the ones responsible for a lot of the shuffling around of the transfer pricing mechanism. And now one of those levers can no longer be pulled.
Right. And this is where it gets deliciously complicated. Carriers have been the conductors of this murky orchestra, right? Juggling transfer prices between hospital systems, PBMs, drug manufacturers, and even their own internal silos. They've used drug pricing flexibility as a strategic lever. Move this rebate here, offer that discount there, then dress it up as a zero premium plan or enhanced coverage. But MFN? That just broke one of their biggest levers. Now they can't squeeze drug pricing to cross-subsidize the rest of the benefit design. So the math gets harder. Plans that looked actuarially sound yesterday suddenly look brittle. And let's not forget, some of these carriers own their PBMs. So this isn't just about plan design, it's about a full-blown identity crisis. What's their margin strategy when the old games are off the table? Should we close out by pointing out what consumers should watch for next, or drop the mic with how this could splinter alliances inside the industry?
Let's go to the industry here because the equity market punished the largest. United Health Group is down something since April 7th, 606. Today, 342, a 40% drop in days, less than in a month. At the same time that the overall equity market completely recovered the Liberation Day decline.
Exactly. And that's not just a market reaction, that's a seismic signal. United Health Group isn't some marginal player. They're the apex predator in the US healthcare jungle. When UNH drops 40% in under a month, while the S&P shrugs off a geopolitical panic, that's not rotation. That's institutional investors saying, something just broke in the model. And what broke is exactly what we've been walking through. MFN undermines the murky layers where companies like UNH extract value, not from providing care, but from optimizing the opacity. They're not just insurers, they're data brokers, rebate chasers, and vertical empires. If you pierce that opacity with a fixed benchmark, margin compression is inevitable. Now multiply that across the ecosystem. Centene, Cigna, CVS Health. If this MFN policy holds and courts don't gut it, you're going to see more pain ahead because these firms aren't built to absorb price clarity. They're built to exploit its absence. You want to finish by forecasting how each sector might try to adapt: PBMs, carriers, pharma. Or do we send this home with a clean warning shot for policymakers?
I do want to talk and hear what your perspective is here, Cass, because these PBMs here now, they're major portions of health insurance companies themselves, meaning health insurance companies, like you said, vertically integrating, meaning that they're the owners of PBM. They're the owners of primary care physicians. They're the owners of hospital systems. There's cross-own equity ownership, no question. So now, like you pointed out, they're the ones who are basically uh, optimizing. That's my nice word, right? Which is optimizing those balances for its own good and for the shareholders' good. I don't want to. I don't want to be hypocritical here, right? Because this is everyday people in their 401ks owning United Health Group as well as the other largest health insurance carriers. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So now the question becomes, okay, what do you think? Why don't you give us a couple of hints in simplified form about what pharma plus health insurance carriers are going to have to say about this?
Yeah, this is where the cozy little healthcare industrial complex gets uncomfortably exposed. So, here's what's happening. These vertically integrated giants, CVS owns Aetna and Caremark, United Health owns Optum and Doctors, and Cigna has Express Scripts. They weren't just managing care, they were arbitraging opacity. They built an internal casino where they could shift pricing chips between subsidiaries, then report record earnings to shareholders while appearing compliant. Now, MFN shows up with a flashlight and that house of mirrors, not so reflective anymore. So, what are they going to say publicly? Here's the playbook simplified. 1. Patient access will be harmed. That's the go-to line. They'll say MFN will lead to shortages, fewer R&D incentives, and cue the violins, reduced access to life-saving therapies. 2. Innovation is at risk. Pharma and insurers will trot out the same script they always do.
Yeah, for
If you
sure.
cut profits, you kill the golden goose of drug discovery. This ignores the fact
No
that a
doubt.
lot of R&D spending goes to slightly tweaking existing drugs, not curing cancer. 3. We need flexibility to serve diverse populations. This one's for the regulators. It's code for let us keep our opaque pricing because it allows us to game risk pools more creatively. Privately, though, these companies are in war room mode, modeling how to restructure internal pricing so their subsidiaries don't cannibalize each other. They'll try to bury MFN's effect in administrative codes, bundled pricing strategies, and value-based frameworks that are opaque enough to survive. And yeah, you're spot on to call out the tension here. Everyday 401k holders do own these firms, but at some point we have to ask, are shareholders better off in a bloated system that eventually collapses under its own weight, or a leaner, more sustainable one with transparency and trust? So, what's our closer? Want to give the people a one liner on what to watch next, or throw a punch at the next likely legal blockade?
It's killing me, yes. It's so complicated. What I want to do is I want to talk about what everyday people, what to look out for. I don't think that any of this stuff is going to be seen right here. The issue is that we're right in this season where the prices are going to be set for next year. And this is that kind of middle of the year area. People wouldn't know this, that the process by which all of this transfer pricing and what the rates are going to be for next year, all of those types of things, that kind of gets established now. For example, Medicare Advantage plans have their per diem. They know what the number is. And now all of a sudden, one of the main components, one of the main inputs, the pricing has been disrupted a lot.
That sounded like a glitch in the matrix, or you're testing if I'm paying attention. Either way, yes, fully alert. You want me to summarize what we've just covered in this session? Or are we tagging the next chapter before we call cut on this recording?
Well, Cass, we dove straight into it hot and heavy. We need to give them the value prop, of course, to Jay's corner.
Absolutely. Let's wrap it tight and punchy. You just got the straight truth. No sponsor fluff, no pharma spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines and actually understand how policy shifts like MFN impact your health, your wallet, and your retirement portfolio, then you already know where to be. This is Jay's Corner, where Wall Street, Medicare, and Main Street all collide. Like, follow, subscribe, and hit that Substack. You're not just getting content, you're getting clarity.